Welcome to the Three Championship Drive podcast on YouTube, hosted by me, Lance Caporossi. Follow me on X at Lance Caporossi, the same way you see it spelled on the screen. Do us a favor, hit that subscribe button, like the video, but more importantly, tell a Pistons fan. Damn, it feels good to be a Pistons fan. Trajan Langdon did the thinkable and parted ways with Troy Weaver. It's a good day. We can celebrate, have a few drinks, toss them back, do just have fun. That's what you need to do because there is a little bit of light in Detroit right now if you're a Pistons fan. I don't want to dump on Troy Weaver too early in this emergency podcast, but let's give him some credit for clearing up cap space and never using any of it. He knew his days were numbered and saved all that money for the next guy. That's $60 million Trajan Langdon can use to speed up this rebuild that we have been waiting for since forever. It has been a long time, in year after year after year after year. It got worse under Troy Weaver, and none of us can really understand why. You have all these young guys, you have all this cap space, you refuse to spend it, and it cost you a job. Even though the Pistons did offer him, I believe, an outside of the building scouting job, which that's cool. I always thought, I mean, if I'm going to be if I was in a position like that and they were going to let me go, I might stay on board. But then after reading some of the comments on X and other social media platforms, I started to think that would be super embarrassing if I decided to do that. So I would never, I'd be like, True Weaver, I'm just packing my bags. I'm out. I'm saying, hey, good luck with the cap space. I was given an impossible task, which, yeah, you sign a contract to a rebuilding team that had a bunch of guys under bad contracts. You knew what you were getting into. So I don't want to say the impossible task name. I'm walking that back. But yeah, Troy Weaver, again, thank you. You somehow set the team back. I don't know if this is worse than Matt Millen or Bob Quinn. I don't know. But it's right up there. This is one of the worst examples of how to be a GM in arguably professional sports history. And it will be remembered with the 28 game losing streak. It's just whatever. When Troy Weaver was brought in by the Detroit Pistons, I was excited because he was coming from one of the better ran organizations in Oklahoma City. I thought the Detroit Pistons would be the East Coast version of that team. You've heard me say it before. I thought he was trying to build the KD Oklahoma City Thunder here in Detroit. Now, they missed out on the generational talent in Victor Wembanyama, but there were a few things missing from being that well-ran organization, like asset management. You see what Oklahoma City does. You see how they collect the draft capital. They don't send draft capital out to get rid of bad contracts. They somehow manage to bring more in, unlike Troy Weaver. And I'll get into some of those mistakes here in a second. But that is what I thought. I don't know why I thought that about Troy Weaver because we really don't know how much input these guys have in other organizations before they come to a new team. So I don't know why we all were excited about Troy Weaver. I don't know who talked about him like he was, the second coming of Sam Presti. I have no idea. I do remember reading something that was kind of funny, like he helped, I don't know if it was like find Carmelo Anthony or steer Carmelo Anthony Syracuse. It was just, man, what are we doing? You know what I'm saying? Like, dude, it's Carmelo Anthony. He was going to go to a big school no matter what. I mean, it was Carmelo. He was one of the best high schoolers in the nation. I don't think, like, if it was finding, like, it would have to be way before Carmelo Anthony, before anybody else heard of him. And I don't think that was the case. But either way, I digress. So there was a lot of things that went wrong under Troy Weaver drafting Killian Hayes. Look, I was a fan of Killian Hayes. I liked the pick at the time, but too many too many times have we heard other NBA players that were linked to the Detroit Pistons on draft day and they just overlooked them, like Desmond Bain, Tyrese Halliburton, to name a few. And it's so weird. I don't understand what that whole nonsense was about. But Killian Hayes drafting him, that was the first mistake. Trading Bruce Brown for Musa. I mean, the excuse to trade Bruce Brown was it didn't seem like it had anything to do with basketball, just more of him going to celebrate his birthday back home. I don't know why. It was in the off season, so I don't understand why a guy would be punished like that. Trading Sadiq Bey for James Wiseman, signing LiAngelo Ball to an exhibition deal, which I think only lasted for like 2 weeks. But dude, what the hell were we doing with that? I don't know. Every other team knew that guy was not an NBA player, but here we are. We're not connected to any other one of LaMelo or Alonzo, but we're bringing in LiAngelo. I don't know what that was about. Trading the Detroit Pistons first round pick that is now currently owned by the New York Knicks, and yeah, we can't do anything with it. We can't use it as part of trades yet. He screwed us on that. Waiting too long to trade Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks. I mean, I think it was last season where it was reported that a first round pick or two could have been had for Bojan. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I mean, you waited a whole another year, and I was kind of on board with keeping him if Troy Weaver had made more moves to make the roster competitive. I thought it was, but then after watching it, you just saw like, okay, they're bringing in Monte Morris and Joe Harris, and this is it. It made more sense to trade Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks. Bringing in contracts like Joe Harris, but not bringing back draft capital. That is a very weird thing to do. You were helping out the Brooklyn Nets, but you didn't really get anything in return. Like, I mean, I know Brooklyn didn't really have anything, but why would you even make a trade with him in the first place, especially when you were preaching defense the entire time and you brought in Joe Harris? Again, that was a move that I liked because I thought Joe Harris would bring the shooting stroke with him and open things up for Cade, but did not happen. Trading for Marvin Bagley, which I believe included Josh Jackson, Trey Lyles, who again, I mean, I would rather have Trey Lyles than Marvin Bagley, even though I did like Marvin Bagley's time here. And I believe 2 second-round picks to bring in Bagley, and then trading Marvin Bagley, which also included 2 second-round picks to offload his contract for Danilo Gallinari and Mike Muscala. I won't say trading Sadiq Bey was the wrong move, but it was for the wrong player. When the NBA was going left, Troy Weaver went right and created this log jam of young bigs where, again, didn't make any sense. There's only 48 minutes in a basketball game, and you want to develop James Wiseman, you want to develop Marvin Bagley, you want to develop Isaiah Stewart, you want to develop Jalen Duren, and then you had no veterans other than Nerlens Noel on here for more than like 10 games or something to help groom these guys and get them ready for a long 82 game NBA season. It was in the like Marvin Bagley and James Wiseman were, I wouldn't say they're the Spider-Man meme, but they were both kind of the same player where, yeah, James Wiseman provided a little bit more, on defense. Marvin Bagley provided a little bit more offensive, but you couldn't play them both together. And you could barely play, you couldn't even really make any two of those fit on the court at the same time. And yet this past season, we saw Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren on the floor a ton of times together on the floor when I really thought the best move would be bring Isaiah Stewart off the bench to cancel out those James Wiseman minutes. But again, we weren't really playing for anything anyway, but it was just a mess. And I was on board with the James Wiseman thing, when he first got here, because I remember this play where he gets the rebound, he pushes it down the floor, and then he dumps it off to Jalen Duren, who dunks it from like 9 feet out. It was an incredible play, and I thought, man, maybe Troy was right. Maybe there's something here with James Wiseman. But again, created this log jam. It didn't work. And now, Marvin Bagley is on the Wizards. James Wiseman's most likely done in Detroit. I would be shocked if Langdon or whoever the GM is going to be in Troy Weaver's place decides to bring him back. Like, it would just be weird. So trades that really netted you nothing, and just it was just bad. There's a lot more moves by Troy Weaver. Those are the ones I thought of immediately and just wrote them down and wanted to talk about them. But those are the moves and where it went wrong with Troy Weaver. Overall, Troy Weaver was in over his head. He wasn't cut out for the job. Maybe his tenure would have been different if he had a president of basketball operations overseeing his moves. But overall, it's just he wasn't cut out for the GM job. I think maybe he really is just a scout and he can identify talent. He certainly didn't do it in the second round. It felt like I don't even know really what it felt like in the second round. It was just bad pick after bad pick after bad pick. Like, I mean, we just saw Luka Garza score some points for Minnesota in the Western Conference Finals. That was pretty cool to see. But, drafting Balsa, and I don't know if they had a roster spot or not, but I mean, I feel like if you are a scout that was coming in with the pedigree that he supposedly had, you should have been able to find some gems in the second round, which he did not do. So I don't know, overall, his time here, it was just terrible. It was lackluster. Cool for the cap space, cool for getting rid of Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond, but really no draft capital. Couldn't build a competent team around Cade Cunningham. And said it before, I don't understand all of the draft picks he made because like you have the guy in Cade. Those next drafts were to start building around him, which he did not do. Like, I'm okay with passing on the guy with maybe the higher potential, but the guy that still has high potential that fits better next to the guy that's gonna be the franchise, which was Cade, and I don't know, just a lot went wrong in this time. But again, I do believe it would have been a little different if he had a president of basketball operations overseeing his moves. But I still think ultimately he wouldn't be here for longer than he was. I just think it was a disaster, and hopefully Trajan Langdon comes in and makes the right moves because we Detroit Pistons fans, we deserve a good team in Detroit. And maybe it comes when the WNBA comes back. I don't know. I don't want to wait that long either. Thank you guys for listening. Feel free to check out the Three Championship Drive podcast on Google, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Hit the follow button over there, rate with 5 stars, and give me your best Troy Weaver move he's ever made in Detroit. And tell a Pistons fan